The text comparison tool in Logos is useful for examining the similarities and differences of Bible translations. This feature can link to as many Bible translations as you have in Logos, or it can be used with a small number, depending on what you are looking for. Today we will look at the text comparison tool and build a layout that helps maximize its use. Now I have windows open from the last time I was in Logos that I don't want open this time. So I'm going to close them all quickly. You can do this by clicking on the little X, or in the command bar, you can type close all. Hit enter. Now we can also make this a shortcut, which I think is handy. And so once you type in close all, you'll see a little drop down, and if you click and hold, you can add. Now I have my English Standard Version and my close all up there. So now I have a blank screen, and I'm going to do Tools, Text Comparison. Now it's small over there, and I would like it to be bigger, and so if I click and drag, I can make it larger, give me a little bit more room. The text comparison has two main bars to type into that can control what you see. On the left, we have the verse, the reference side, and for now I'm going to do Genesis 1, 1 through 3. And then on the right, we can pick which versions. Now under this, there's recent, where you can see different ones I've used. You can also see some different types that Logos has. They have series. You can also build your own collections of them, which we'll work on later. But for now, I'm going to keep it with the ESV, the KJV, and the NASB 95. The reason I picked these three is because they are all considered formal translations. Formal translations are translations where the purpose was to follow the original text as much as possible. They are translated into English with the goal of preserving the original language. These Bibles are sometimes more difficult to read because they do not attempt to make the text easier to understand for the modern reader if they do not have to. Now we'll look at the other type of translations momentarily, but first we're going to look at the two tools to the right of that. Now these A's are, there's a kind of a darker blue and a lighter blue one. The first, the blue, if we click on it, you can see what it's changing. Whatever translation we have on the left, which we have the ESV here, it's whatever one we have in the first slot up here, will not change when you click on these. And so you'll notice if I click on either of these, nothing's really changing on the left except lining up. But when I click on this A, you'll see that there's blue text that appears on the other two. What this blue text shows is the blue text shows us what's different. Now, in Genesis 1, the English Standard Version says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." In the KJV, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." So we go from heavens to heaven, and so that's blue. And the NASB is the same as the ESV. So that blue text shows us the differences quickly. We can also get a more broad if we show the base text, which is the far right A. And this will now show us the words that are crossed off where the changes are. You'll notice in Genesis 1:1 that first in the KJV is capital IN. In the second, you'll see "and the earth." So we see there's no conjunction in the English Standard and the NASB, but there is in the KJV. And all of this grayed out area shows us what the ESV said. And so we see that in all of these. And so we can kind of start to see the differences. Depending on how you want to do it, sometimes I don't use the strike through because I think it can make it harder to read everything, but it's also nice to see for how much has changed. So you've got some different visual options. The text comparison tool is also very dynamic. I can, if I click on the left and right arrows up here, it's the icon for the tab, I can make the text much bigger, which makes it a lot easier to read, but it also, you can get to the point where it's too big, or if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to do the whole of Genesis 1, it can get kind of unruly, and then you have to scroll through a lot. You can play around with that as you want. That's up to you. I'm going to go back to Genesis 1, 1 through 3. So we're now going to create a second text comparison window here. All of the tools in Logos, you can open multiple versions of them. So if you have one text comparison up, you don't have to close it to open another. So that one's small, so I'm going to build it out. And so now I have two versions. And on the left here, this was our formal, so on the right here, I'm going to make our functional translation. And remember, the functional ones are the ones where the translator had the mindset of making sure the text is understandable to the modern audience. They tried to smooth it for the modern reader a little more. And so for this version, we're going to do the NIV, then a comma, then the HCSB, then the NLT, and the NET. Now the Net Bible is a little bit special, but it is written as a functional, and so we'll talk about the Net Bible later for more specifics. But now I have, on one side, I've got my formal, and on the other side, I've got my functional. This line, this little gray line here, imagine this line is a lot thicker and more prominent, because when we're comparing, we don't want to compare across this line. We want to keep our formal comparing our formal and our functional comparing our functional. But it's useful to have this up, because you might look on one side and you might see how they're translating something, and then look on the other side, not comparing, but seeing the thoughts here. So I'm going to show you a couple more things you can do with this. One of the things, if we click on the icon, we can do a link set. And so if I click A over here, and then click A over here, if on either of these, let's say I decided I wanted to do Exodus 1, 1 through 3, hit enter, they follow each other. So this linking resource allows you to jump around and keep different windows going together. This is a lot more useful if you have a Bible open and another resource open, or some of the different tools, so you can have them all follow each other. This is just a quick example. The last thing I want to show you, let's say that you're working in this tool and you realize, or this layout, because this is a layout, you're working in this layout and you decide, I want to be able to come to this layout all the time. I think it's going to be very useful as I study. The simple way to do that is to create your own layout. And to do that, if we click up on the right on layouts, the active layout will be the top right layout. It says update active. What you can do, it says now up here, you can click save as named layout, and I'm going to call this formal and functional comparisons, and then hit enter. Now if I look over on the left side, I will see that up. And so if I were to click my close all, and then click layouts, the first thing, it will show my most recent layout, so I could find it there. But if I click the formal and functional comparison, it will go to the last place I was in that layout. Comparing the texts can give us insights into what choices the translators were making. How did they translate certain verbs or certain tenses? What did they do if they came across a hypoxodomina? These are questions that scratch the surface of what we are able to find when utilizing the text comparison tool.